Morning, One Church. So good to see you. Don't you just love to come into the presence of God and worship with the rest of the church body? Isn't that just a great, no matter what kind of week you had, no matter how tough it might have been, how disappointing it might have been, no matter who your team might have drafted? I'm not talking about my team. I'm a Browns fan. Some of your teams drafted some scrubs, but you do know the Browns we're winning the Super Bowl next year. Come on, somebody. Who's got faith in the house? Faith the size of a mustard seed. You can say to a mountain to be removed. We ought to be able to at least get one Super Bowl. I got more than a mustard seed of faith. That's another sermon. Anyway, welcome to One Church. Hope you had a great day so far. And we hope that we were able to strike a good balance of giving you your space, but helping you know that you're welcome here. We're really thrilled to have you. And it's fun to see what God is doing through his body and through his people. And I love seeing familiar faces, and I love seeing new faces. And I hope you know that if you're here and you're coming as a guest and you're new, that we hope that you find it so comforting and that you engage so much that you'll want to come back and stay and become part of the family and include others as well. That's why we do the growth track that Chris was just talking about. I want to help you to be planted and rooted and supported. I'm going to get into the message today. By the way, my name is Greg, and I'm one of the pastors here, and it's my privilege to speak to you on this topic, why God? And I think it's a question that any honest person who's ever been through a painful situation would ask. And why God, I think, comes from, at times, what seems to be a lack of congruence between our experiences and then what we've been told about God. So we've been told that God is loving and that God is powerful and that God is just. And so when injustice happens, it's confusing. You would think that if God allowed something to happen, why wouldn't he stop it? So we conclude he's either unjust or not loving, or he's not powerful. If he loved and wanted to do something about it, but he didn't do anything, maybe it's because he wasn't powerful enough. Or if he's powerful enough, but he didn't do anything anyway, maybe he's unjust or unloving. And when feelings hit and tragedy strikes, we kind of ask God, why? Where were you? What's going on? That's a perfectly acceptable question. There's a guy that asked that question repeatedly in the Bible, a guy by the name of Job. We're looking at his story in the Old Testament, and I kind of put out online today, hey, I know some people, you are so confused and frustrated and angry with God that maybe you're considering serving him up divorce papers, and encourage you to come today for an honest conversation. And then you have a free will, and you can decide to do whatever you want to do. But I kind of want to talk us through this. Trauma affects relationships. It's not uncommon for relationships to actually fall apart in the aftermath of tragedy. And it happens with earthly relationships. It happens in marriages and families and friends. And it also happens for some in their relationship with God. And so today I want to help you process through your relationship with God. And specifically for those of you that are kind of at a defining moment in that relationship. Now, before we zoom in specifically to your relationship with God, I want us to do something. I want to fly up to 10,000 feet, and I want us to examine our attitudes and our cultural attitude around relationships in general. In many ways, we all sit here today as a byproduct of our relationships. Not so much the quantity of relationships, but the quality of relationships. We learn how to do relationships. We learn what it means to commit. We learn what it means to communicate, what it means to love, and what it means to relate, all based on our experiences. We saw it in the relationships that we grew up around, our parents, some of our previous relationships, the way we've been treated, and our experiences teach us what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in relationships. Let's use marriage as an example, okay? And this is not a marriage sermon, but I'm going to use marriage as an example of this. Marriage is a relationship that's designed by God, and it's designed for the purpose of intimacy. Not just procreation, but relational depth. And marriage was actually created as a mirror image of our relationship with God. This is why in Ephesians 5, Paul says, hey, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Look how Jesus treated the church. He went to the cross for the church. He sacrificed for the church. He said, hey, that's how you should do marriage. And so if done right, marriage is the closest thing we have on this earth to what an unconditional relationship with God looks like. But what's happened in our culture is that it's become commonplace to sever relationships. Marriage is a covenant relationship based on unconditional love, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. And yet, it doesn't always work out that way. Culturally, that doesn't mirror what we say in the vows. The statistics back up my premise. 41% of first marriages end in divorce. 60% of second marriages end in divorce. And 73% of third marriages end in divorce. In America, there is a divorce approximately every 36 seconds. There's nearly 2,400 divorces per day. The average length of a marriage that ends in divorce is 8 years. Now, I'm not here today to pile on to you, or if you're here and you're divorced, I promise, I'm not here to shame you. I'm not here to make you feel self-conscious. I'm not here to judge you or to make you feel guilty from your past. And I want to be very clear. I know that in some relationships, there's abuse. There is psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, and in some cases, people need for their life's sake to separate. And so, and I understand we can't go and do the past. So I'm not here to dig that up and to make you feel bad. Simply, what I'm talking about today is I want us to take a look at the pervasive mindset that's become culturally acceptable about relationships today that actually robs us of relational intimacy. We created conditional, very, very conditional relationships. I want us to rethink, before we even get into the relationship with God, I want us to rethink our approach to relationships, especially as it relates to our most important relationships, and then specifically how it relates to our relationship with God. Now, I want you to understand something. What it's God's intention for how you would do relationships. Here's how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to start with our relationship with God. And we learn how to do relationships based on that one. And then that model for relationships now is applied to our other earthly relationships. What we tend to do is invert it. So instead of starting with my relationship with God and learning what love and commitment and communication and all of that looks like from God, and then using it to permeate all my other relationships, we start with our relationships of how we do relationships impulsively and culturally, and then we go apply that to God. It's backwards. I'm going to prove it to you in the scripture. 1 John 3:16 says this: we know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. Okay? Starts with Jesus. He shows us what real love is. He gives us a model. So my reaction is to take that model into my relationship with everybody else. And actually, when he says brothers and sisters here, he's not talking about biological siblings. He's talking about those who share the same Father in Christ, regardless of race, regardless of culture, regardless of political party, regardless of neighborhood. We have the same Father. So he says, Jesus laid down his life. You ought to lay down your life for your brothers and sisters. 1 John 4, okay, the next chapter, it says this, as we live in God, so it starts there, as we live in God, our love grows more perfect. So we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Jesus here in the world. Such love has no fear. By the way, if you've ever been in a conditional relationship, I don't care what the vows were, I don't care what the lip service was, if you knew that this relationship's conditional, and if I step out of bounds, or if I do something wrong, or if I don't please this person, they're out. That is a relationship based on fear. So you might cause me to be compliant. Why? Because I'm afraid of you. He says that's not love at all. Perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it's for fear of punishment. And this shows that we have not yet fully experienced his perfect love. Then verse 19. Okay, so all that was talking about our love for God and God's love for us. Verse 19 says this, we love each other. Why? Because he first loved us. Starts with God. We learn how to do relationships from God. We learn what unconditional means from God. We learn what love even means from God through Jesus. And then now we go apply that to everybody else. But that's not how we do it in our culture. We've inverted it. What's happened is we've created a culture where it is very common to end a relationship. And I'm not talking about any old relationship. I'm talking about our serious relationships. I'm not talking about your t-ball coach or your piano teacher or the mailman. I'm talking about the relationships that should be the most intimate relationships. They should be the most committed. They should be the most unconditional. I'm talking mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives. We're talking our best, closest friends, people we're in relationship with. But we have allowed our relationships to become very conditional. No wonder we are so lonely. I met with a guy recently. He's in his late 20s. And he said to me, and I quote, I don't think anyone on this earth loves me unconditionally. And he might be right. He said, my dad didn't. He left when I was a kid. I'm not even sure why. My mom didn't. Everything around her was merit-based. If I did what she wanted, then everything was good. When I didn't, I was cast off to the side. He said, every lover that I've ever had, totally conditional. He said, I don't think anybody here, you want to talk about lonely. The loneliness in the room was palpable. So when we settle for and we create conditional relationships, just settle in for a lonely life and an insecure life and relationships based on fear. That's what we've created in our culture, because we didn't go to God first and say, teach me how to do it and show me how to be a husband and show me how to be a wife and show me how to be a friend. We took our impulses and our culture and what we've said is normal, and we've applied it to everyone, including God. Now, let me show you how relationships break down, okay? This is how they break down. I've used this tool before. It's just a nice little resource for you, but this is what we call the frustration scale, all right? Frustration happens when performance does not meet expectation. So you got your expectation there at the top, expectations at least a 9, performances at a 5. That means everything between 6 and 8 is called frustration. We'll just give you a tangible example. Let's say that my wife, Shaylin, expects me to be home every night for dinner, 7 nights a week. But I'm only home 5 nights a week. Well, those 2 nights are called frustration. So we have a few options. 1, I can raise my performance and show up 7 nights. Problem solved. 2, she can lower her expectations to a 5, frustration gone. Or we can compromise at 6 and problem solved. You can apply this to anything. If you want your child to get straight A's and they get 2 B's, that's the gap. You can either lower your expectation, they can raise their performance, we can figure it out. So this is how we do it. Now, This works in these very tangible things like how many nights a week you're going to get home, something that we can calculate, something that we can quantify. But here's what happens is we actually have expectations many times in relationships that is very hard to quantify. So, for example, I have sexual expectations. I have addiction expectations. I have money expectations. There's in-law expectations. There's expectations around communication. There's expectations around what it means to be supportive. There's expectations around how much attention am I going to give you or are you going to give me? There's expectations around how you're going to make me feel. There's expectations around how much fun we're going to have. There's expectations on how good of a listener you are. There's expectations on how engaged that your partner is going to be in parenting, what work-life balance is going to look like, what health and lifestyle habits and choices and standard of living, all these expectations. So here's how relationships break down. If my expectations are not met, after pleading and begging and arguing and manipulating and arguing and manipulating and pleading and fighting and bargaining and wrestling and cussing, we can't find any satisfaction. And I'm sick of fighting. We can't come to any resolution. Eventually we say, I can't take this anymore. How about you go your way and I'll go my way? I deserve to be happy. I'm tired of being miserable. I'm tired of making you miserable. We've tried and we can't get on the same page. And frankly, I don't believe we're ever going to get on the same page. And so you go your way, I'll go mine, and we'll call it irreconcilable differences. We couldn't figure it out. And life's too short for us to live like this. Let's move on. My expectations are not met, and I don't think they're going to get met, and I don't want to live with unmet expectations, and you don't either. By the way, this is the exact same formula that people use when they file for disillusionment with God. I want to dissolve this relationship. Why? Well, unmet expectations and irreconcilable differences with God. You go your way, I'll go mine. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. We aren't communicating well. We're disappointing each other. Neither of us is fulfilled in this relationship. I'm sick of this, and it seems like you are too. I've been asking you questions. You don't seem to be answering. I can't seem to find any resolution, and you don't seem like you're all that engaged. And so you go your way, I'll go mine, God. And we'll just call it irreconcilable differences. Now, before you divorce God, I just want to make you aware of, I want to talk you through this so that you can be fully aware of what you're doing. And if you do, at the end of this message, friend, you have a free will. You're entitled to do whatever you want to do. You walk away from God, you walk away from God. I just want to make sure you do it having fully thought this thing through. What you're doing is you are choosing to have a conditional relationship with God. If I will walk away from a relationship with anyone, including God, because I lost something or because you didn't meet my expectation, what I've actually done is I've revealed an idol. So at the very beginning of the Bible, when the commandments are coming out, the first commandment is, thou shalt have no other God before me. In other words, nothing, even good things, should not be elevated over God. Children should not be elevated over God. Lovers or marriage or whatever should not be nothing. Your career is awesome. These are good things. They're not supposed to be God things. They're good things, but you're not supposed to put them over God. What a conditional relationship says is this. Here's a conditional relationship. If I can't have this, I don't want you. If you don't meet this need, if you don't meet this expectation, I don't want you. I only want you if I can have this. And if this goes away, I don't want you either. Because here's what God offers us. God, by the way, God never said, hey, I promise you I'll never disappoint you. God's never said, hey, I guarantee you I'll always meet all your expectations. He never said that. He said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. What God has offered you is unconditional love and irrevocable presence. His presence does not leave you or forsake you. He's omnipresent. He's always with you. He didn't say, I'll give you everything you ever wanted. Or I'll protect everything that you've ever had. Never said that. So what happens is this. God allows us to have something, gives us these blessings, these gifts, and they become, actually, if we're being honest, we put them over him. And it bubbles up to the surface when it's now removed and it's gone. And we're so mad that he either took it or allowed it to be taken that we say, if I can't have that, I don't want you. By the way, this is the very thing that Satan says in Job 1 as he's talking. God and Satan are having a conversation about Job. It's the very thing that Satan says, I'll bet you Job will do this. I'll bet you that if all this stuff's gone, I bet he won't want you anymore. Look at this, Job 1, 8 through 11. The Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth. He's blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. Job and I have a great relationship, man. We're really tight. There's no relational frustration. Expectation and performance are totally aligned. Job and I are great. Verse 9, Satan replied to the Lord, yes, but Job has good reason to fear you, God. You've always put a wall of protection around him. You've always met his expectations and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. It's conditional. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face and cite irreconcilable differences. Now, we know from the story, God does not take his stuff away, but he allows his stuff to be taken away. And Job says, I'll bet you. I know how people are. When people, no matter what their lip service is, no matter what their vows are, no matter what their commitment is, boy, if you don't meet their expectations long enough, they'll go irreconcilable differences. He will curse you to your face, and he will want to walk away, and he'll want to sever the tie. I'm telling you, God, watch. And in essence, Satan says to God, you won't believe how conditional this relationship is. Hey, have you ever been across from someone or in relationship with someone, and they may have been charming, but you knew it was conditional? You just knew. You knew that if you didn't live up to what they wanted, that you were going to be no good to them. Ladies, have you ever been on a date with a guy that was charming, but you really knew he really wanted to get in your pants? Can we not keep it real at 11 o'clock service? I mean, he played the part. He took you to a nice restaurant and spared no expense, opened up your car door and wore deodorant, and let you supersize. And kept asking you about yourself and treating you like rolling out the red carpet. But there was something about him. You just knew what he's really after. And there was something in you that knew, this is going to last for a little while. But if I don't give him what he wants in a timely fashion, that this generosity is going to dry up in a hurry, and he's going to redistribute his resources to a more willing participant. Oh, you're not feeling me this morning. Have you ever sat across from a really good, engaging salesman? I mean, after 30 seconds, you're their best friend. And you're thinking, if I was to get married, he'd be the best man at my wedding. I don't even know his last name. I mean, just built this rapport, and they're acting like your best friend, but there's something in you that knew they're trying to sell me something. And if I don't buy the product, this relationship's not going to last. They really don't want me. They want my commission. They want my money. They want me to buy their product. And if I don't buy their product, this relationship's going to end fast. and I'll be dead to them. Some of you have lived the pain of actually having a relationship like that with someone who it should have been unconditional. A spouse or a parent or a sibling or a family member that you did not meet their expectations and they had no more use for you. How did that feel? It's awful. Conditional relationships by nature are unstable. Because you know if I don't meet your expectations, you are going to toss me off to the side. If I can't have that, if I don't do that, you don't want me. By the way, most people treat God like that. That's how we treat God. Many people. If he doesn't deliver, he doesn't provide what I want, or he doesn't protect what I have, I'll not only give him the cold shoulder, I will sever the relationship and walk away completely and call it irreconcilable differences. Is that where you're at? Is that how you treat God? If he disappoints you, are you willing to just walk away? You treat him that way? Can you imagine standing up in a marriage ceremony where they keep it real? I promise to love you in good times and in bad, unless you get into a car accident, you're paralyzed, and then I'm going to really reconsider my options. I'll love you for richer or for poorer, unless we lose everything. If we go bankrupt, then I may go find someone who's better than you at making money. I'll love you in sickness and in health, unless you contract a disease that sort of has an extended sort of suffering process, because I'm not really a sit by the bedside type of person. I have to reconsider my option. No, there's something about even as I say that causes a visceral reaction of like, that's not right. Because we know like deep down that the depth of a relationship is based on unconditional love. But friend, I'm going to tell you, it's rare. It's rare. We don't even do it in the relationships that we promise to do. And so I just want you to go, I just want you to walk away from God. If you're going to walk away, just walk away with your eyes wide open. Understand what you've done. You have said, if I can't have this, I don't want you. You put conditions around a relationship when God's conditions, he said, look, I'll never leave you. I have irrevocable presence and unconditional love. Look at this. Psalm 23:4 says, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect me and comfort me. In the King James, it's, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? You're with me. It's your presence that I value, not the things you can give me, not the blessings. It's your presence. In Psalm 23, he's not mad that I'm in the valley of the shadow of death. He's like, man, when I am in the valley of the shadow of death, I won't be afraid. Why? Because I know you're there. God does not revoke his presence from you. He's with you. But yet many of us shun him. Why? Because if I can't have that, I don't want you. You know, in church we're in good, Christians are good at giving lip service to commitment and depth of relationship with God until we're actually put in those situations. We say stuff like, God is all I need, and he's more than enough. But friend, let me tell you something. You will find out if God is all you need when God is all you have. If you're going to walk away from God because he disappointed you and let you down, so you're going to reject his presence and sever ties because he didn't meet your expectations, that's fine. You have a free will. You're entitled to do that. But just to be clear, what you're doing, you're putting a conditional relationship on someone who's offered you an unconditional one. Meet my needs, meet my expectations, or I'm out. So what are you asking me to do, Greg? What are you asking me to do? I can feel you. I understand. Some of you are saying, Greg, I've been through stuff you don't even know about. I've walked through seasons. I've walked through pain and agony, Greg, you don't even know about. Standing up there on your stage in your high horse talking down to me like blah, blah, blah. Listen, let me tell you something. I'm not asking you to listen to me today or look at me. What I want to do is just point you to Job. Because frankly, I'll be honest enough to say, there's people in this room have gone through anguish and pain. I haven't. I haven't been there in all those situations. I'm just trying to get our head above water. I want to point you to Job because whatever you're going through, it's pretty tough to go toe-to-toe with Job in a trauma contest. Dude lost everything. All of his children, his whole business, all of his possessions, all of his employees, all of his status, and even his health. And what we see from him is that in spite of irreconcilable differences, and we'll call all of your children dying, that's irreconcilable. Yeah, but in 42, God gave him new children. I don't want new children. What are you talking about? You take my child, thank God for another child, but I want that child. I bonded with that child. I held that child. Irreconcilable. We can't go undo this. In spite of Job's irreconcilable differences, he fought and he cried and he was emotional and he was angry and he was confused and all of that, but he never left. 42 chapters, friend, he wrestled. He questioned. He sounded off, but he never left. He never quit connecting to God. He didn't turn. You know, what we tend to do at these turning point moments and when we're at our worst place, when we're angry, confused, frustrated, is we tend to lash out in the same way that we express love. Let me explain. I've talked to you all before, but for those of you that are new, there's a book called The 5 Love Languages. It's by a guy named Gary Chapman. He uses the term love languages because think about like Greek, French, Spanish, English. If you've ever heard somebody, you don't understand their language, they may be saying the nicest thing in the world. You just don't know what they're saying because you don't understand their language. He talks about there are 5 areas that we give the language of love. So there's words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, physical touch, and acts of service. Leave that up for a minute. So, if you're a words of affirmation person, when you give words because you want to express love. You're saying it all the time. I love you. I love you. You want to hear it back. I know people are words of affirmation person when they really remember. No one told me they love me. My parents didn't tell me that. When you do something nice as an act of love and no one says anything about it, it drives you crazy. So the words really matter to you. Acts of service. This is, I love you, so I'm going to prove it in my effort and serving you. Okay, so this is the way that we give love. But by the way, it's also the way that we inflict pain. So I'll be real personal. I have 2 love languages that are primary for me. One is words of affirmation. So I'm pretty generous with giving kind words to people. And it means a lot to me when it's authentic and genuine and it comes back to me. I remember those things. I file those away. It's important to me. And then also physical touch is one for me. I'm a hugger. I reach out and I try to hug without getting too far in your personal space. I've had people who I know aren't, physical touch people. And I come up and hug. They're like, oh, okay. All right. I guess we're doing this today, okay? All right, and I'm sorry, but that's just what I do. And so when I express love, I love to worship God, and I'm worshiping God because I love Him, and so I'm singing the words of the song, and I'm speaking out to Him, and I'm even physically engaged. I lift up my hands, and Lord, I surrender to you, and I'm all in. Now, here's how I work, because when I'm loving, I'm all good. When I'm bad, I want to use those same avenues to inflict pain. So can I just be honest, okay? I give love with words, but when I'm angry, I want to use words. Like I want to cuss you out. Was that too real? Was that too real for you? Just be honest. Like I struggle. It's a struggle. Words. My mouth. If I'm angry, I want to cut you with my tongue. Or completely withhold my words. Don't talk to me. I'm not even going to talk to you. I'm not even going to give you the time of day. I'm not even going to speak to you. I'll go silent. Why? because you're not worth my words. I'm angry. When I feel love, I want to express it physically. When I feel anger, I want to express it physically. I might want to lash out. Again, it's a feeling. Or I might just want to go, don't touch me. Do not touch me. Keep your hands off of me. I'm angry. Friend, when God doesn't meet expectation and there's anger, God, I served you. I served you. And you didn't protect. And you didn't provide. I'm not serving you anymore. I worshiped you. I told people about you. I sang your praises. And you let me down. I'm not even going to speak to you. I'm going to lash out with my words. We know Job was a words person because he talked for 42 chapters. And if you read the whole thing, he continually affirms himself. And he goes, but at least I haven't cursed God. He's really proud of himself. He's like, I wanted to, but I didn't. But he kept wrestling. He kept asking. Friend, don't bury your emotion. He was emotionally engaged. He was emotionally honest. God is not afraid of your emotions. He gave them to you. Don't bury it. Don't turn away. I'll take you to the words of Job. Listen to Job as he's being emotionally honest. He doesn't stuff his emotions. He's fighting through. Job 2:11 says, or actually this is 3:11. Why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die when I came from my mother's womb? He is so down. Job 3:25-26. What I've always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come true. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Only trouble comes. He says this to his friend who's like trying to help him, but really isn't helping him. In Job 6, he says, honest words can be painful, but what do your criticisms amount to? Do you think your words are convincing when you disregard my cry of desperation? You would even send an orphan into slavery or sell a friend. Job 7:9-11, he says, just as a cloud dissipates and vanishes, those who die will not come back. Who do you think he's talking about? Talking about his kids. He's in chapter 7. He's processing. He doesn't stuff his emotion. He's realizing they will not come back. They're gone forever from their home, never to be seen again. I cannot keep from speaking. He says, I must express my anguish. My bitter soul must complain. Verse 20, he's crying out to God. If I have sinned, what have I done to you, O watcher of all humanity? Why make me your target? Am I a burden to you? Why not just forgive my sin and take away my guilt? For like the first 30 chapters, Job primarily is just trying to figure it out logically. He's like, Lord, I don't think I did anything wrong. I don't think I deserve this. How can you be just and loving and do that or let it happen? But he kept processing. You know what he did? He grieved, but he didn't leave. He didn't leave. He didn't leave. He stayed. He stayed. 42 chapters. God, I don't get it. You've not met my expectation. I'm beyond frustrated, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay. I'm going to keep wrestling. I'm going to keep arguing. Yes, these differences are irreconcilable, but I'm not going to serve you the papers. I'm not going to dissolve this thing. I might be in the valley of the shadow of death, but I don't want to be here alone. I need your rod and your staff to comfort me. So I'm not cutting ties. Job 29:2-5, he said, I long for the years gone when God took good care of me, when he lit up my way before me. I walked safely through the darkness. When I was in my prime, God's friendship was felt in my home. The Almighty was still with me, and my children were around me. Here's the reality. God was still with him there. What are you going to do? You have a free will. You have the opportunity to say, God, if I don't get this, if I don't have this, I don't want you. Some of you have some irreconcilable differences. So we can dissolve this thing, and I can go through the valley of the shadow of death by myself. Or I can go unconditional love, irrevocable presence, and say, God, I don't understand how I got here to the valley of the shadow of death, but I don't want to be afraid of evil, for I know you are with me. So I need your rod, and I need your staff to comfort me as I walk through this. Throughout this series, we've been giving you an opportunity to respond to God, to respond. I think it's really important. So easy to sit in something like this, walk out, not process it, not think through it, and not commit to anything. And some of you will maybe not be ready to take action yet, but some of you, I believe, are ready. I think this was a turning point moment. This was something that God was preparing for you. But we've given you these cards that are at your seat, and I want to give you an opportunity to make one of two decisions. The first one is the word, even if, ... Some of you are in an even if situation. There's the future is uncertain. What's going to happen with this situation? And you're imagining, remember Job says, my worst nightmare came true. Even if the diagnosis comes back the way I don't want it to come back. Even if I'm in the valley of the shadow of death. Even if the thing I dread, actually, Lord, I will. And for some of you, it's not even if, it's even though. Even though this happened. Even though this is gone. Even though our differences are irreconcilable, I will. We have pins at your seat there. I want to give you a chance to write something, and I'm actually not going to have you come forward. I want you to keep this. I want you to take it home with you. And Christy's going to lead us in a song, and as she does, if this is something that you say, I need to reaffirm my commitment, the unconditional to God. As she sings, I want to encourage you to write what you need to write and then stand up on your feet and connect to God.